optimistic about the general level of seminary students coming through. Now, I see that up close with RTS. There's Puritan Seminary, we have Westminster's, there are a number of good seminaries. And I am encouraged that the men I see coming through are by and large really eager to learn the Reformed faith. They don't have an axe to grind. They have, most of them at least, we all got this wrestling in our hearts, but they want to be willing to be ordinary pastors. Let me just get there and get my hands dirty. I want to do ministry. So I am really encouraged by the young men that I see moving through our schools and wanting to go into seminary. I'm also encouraged, think about the PCA. Jason's been in longer than I have, but I've heard Liggins say this. For all of the concerns we might have about the fraying at the edges of certain areas in the PCA, it's undoubtedly the case that the PCA is much more confessionally reformed now than probably it ever has been. When it started 50 years ago, it was a lot of Billy Graham Presbyterians. I don't use that as an insult, but I just mean Southern, kind of grew up Presbyterian, Great Commission, evangelize, figure out the doctrine as we go. And hopefully we don't lose that evangelized church plant mission aim, but there's much more of a doctrinalist cohesion and core and importance attached to Reformed theology and the confessions than I think there ever has been. Does everyone feel that way? Of course not. It's a 400,000 person denomination with 1,500 churches. So to my brothers in the PCA who are a bit more alarmist than I am, to say, yeah, if you want this much diversity, you need a much, much smaller denomination. You're going to have one that has 400,000 people and 1,500 churches. We're going to have to live with some things happening that we say, I wish that wasn't happening. We'll do our best to prevent that from happening, but sometimes it's just going to happen. So overall, I'm bullish on the PCA and the Reformed world in particular. It's so easy. Bad news travels so much faster than good news. It's so easy to say, Reformed evangelicalism, Mark Driscoll, James McDonald, Tully, Darren Patrick, and now you add Matt Chandler. I don't think just putting the list together that way is fair, but even if you did, that's not really what's happening. And to take 4 or 5 examples like that and let hostile media tell us, well, that's really what's happening, is not at all accurate. And I think the rank and file member in our churches are trying their best to navigate this really changing world. They're trying to build bridges in the right places and build walls in the right places. So I look around at the PCA and I see tons of good guys, good ministries, churches doing their best to do the right thing. And yes, there's problems, but I'll take our problems over almost anyone else's problems.
Amen. I think to add to it, Jared, I think it's not just the seminary students and their degree of certitude on these things, but it's also the number. I mean, we have more PCA pastors than we have churches. I mean, we got a glut of ministers, and that's a good sign. I mean, denominations starting to die 1,000 deaths when they don't have pastors to fill pulpits. And we not only have good men, we have a lot of men that are coming forward. So to me, that's encouraging. The other part is men like you that are planting churches. There is still a huge church planting movement in the PCA. And I'm excited about the trajectory that it's on now, where it's not we're trying to get the charismatic kind of flagship guy that he's a Pied Piper, everybody will fall in line behind him. But what I see now, kind of changing landscape, is that we're looking for plotting pastors that are going to plant good 200-member churches that will then plant more churches. And I think that's good in the long run for us. The other is I look out and I think broader Reformed evangelicalism. I think son Kevin had such a great influence in the young restless Reformed. People say, well, that whole thing, it died out. It didn't really look at all the people that crashed in the midst of it. We don't see the benefits of that. I think we do in two areas in particular. One is that we have a whole generation, they may have abandoned a lot of things, but there's a whole generation now that is absolutely convinced of expository preaching. Absolutely convinced this is the only way. And to me, that's a win. I mean, that's a huge win for the evangelical church. And they're also convinced about the doctrines of grace. And they're zealous for it. The other is what John here, I mean, we have now a whole publishing industry of great books that are coming out and don't seem to stop because Kevin keeps writing them. But they just keep coming out. And we have more resources now. I mean, unbelievable thinking just even 15 years ago what we have now. And much of that is due to the kind of resurgence that happened with the YR movement. So I'm also very bullish about the PCA, very bullish about the Reformed evangelical world. And I think all these cultural pressures, it is, now we can get off the reservation and everything becomes about combating everything in culture. That's true. But what it's also doing is that it's helping to pull the church together, at least in our realm, I think. And we're seeing, even like Jeremy here and others, where there's a migration that's happening where they're shifting affiliation lines that are happening all across the Christian landscape. And it's helping to solidify that this is where the Orthodox are at. This is where we're going to hold on. And I think it's only making us stronger